All right, let's start talking about cellular respiration and photosynthesis. So, quick review on the board. This is photosynthesis. Photosynthesis is a process in which we take energy in the form of light. I shouldn't say we, I'm sorry. Plants, algae, some bacteria, take energy in the form of light, carbon dioxide, water, and through a chemical process called photosynthesis, they convert it into oxygen and glucose. This is photosynthesis. This is what we talk about. Cellular respiration is a process that is similar in terms of reactants and products, but if you look at the reactants of one versus the products, so what we start with the reactants versus the products versus the reactants, they're similar. They aren't opposites, they aren't like reverse processes, but there's a lot of similarities, right? So the glucose and oxygen that we start with in cellular respiration were the products that the plants made over here. The carbon dioxide and water that is released is also used by the plants as reactants in photosynthesis. The biggest difference between these, besides the fact that the arrows are on, the reactant products are flipped, is the energy form in which we start and end with. So we start, in photosynthesis use energy in the form of light, where in cellular respiration we release energy in the form of something called ATP. All living things go through cellular respiration. All living things go through cellular respiration. All living things take sugars and oxygen and break them down into carbon dioxide, water, and energy in the form of ATP. All living things. All living things go through this process. And I said that a lot, and I'll say it a couple more times. All living things go through that process. So a lot of times when we think of cellular respiration and photosynthesis, we think of plants with photosynthesis and animals as cellular respiration. But all living things, including plants, go through cellular respiration. All living things, including some bacteria, algae, and plants, go through cellular respiration, which means they require oxygen. Plants need oxygen to live. Plants need sugar in order to live. The difference between plants and animals is the plants make their own sugars. Plants make oxygen that they need for photosynthesis, cellular respiration. Where animals don't. We have to eat food. We have to breathe in air. So when we talk about cellular respiration, it's really 3 steps, and we aren't going to get into the details of what the 3 steps are. 2 out of the 3 steps occur in the mitochondria, 1 of them occurs in the cytoplasm. So a lot of times we say cellular respiration occurs in the mitochondria. It's not a 100% accurate statement. Most of cellular respiration occurs in the mitochondria, but not all of it. Some of it does happen in the cytoplasm, but most of it happens in the mitochondria. So as like an oversimplified model like this, or diagram, just like in your POGIL, they showed cellular respiration occurring in the mitochondria. That's the organelle in which a lot of it happens. So when we talk about the powerhouse of the cell, mitochondria converting free chemical energy from glucose into free energy, ATP, that's correct. It's just not all of it happens in the mitochondria. Food. We need food. We need to eat food. All living things need some source of chemical energy. We have to eat that in order to survive. So food provides living things with that chemical building blocks so we can grow, so we can reproduce, so we can carry on life functions. ATP is a form of that energy that our bodies use. So when we talk about cellular respiration, we're talking on the cellular level or at the cells. Your body takes this food, this sugar, and converts it into ATP. And my cells use ATP in order to move, to flex my muscles. My cells use ATP in order to replicate. My cells use ATP to digest my food. All chemical processes on the cellular level use that ATP, which your body breaks down. Food is chemical energy. Glucose has chemical energy stored in chemical bonds that breaks down and converts it into usable energy. The goal of cellular respiration is to slowly release energy from glucose in a series of small steps. The slow release allows for less energy to be lost as heat. Okay, I'll come back to this explosion versus slow burn. The major food molecule broken down is glucose. There are other sugar molecules that can be broken down. We just kind of oversimplify and say, it's glucose. It's not always glucose. So the goal is a series of small steps to slowly release chemical, or to slowly release that energy. I like to think about a tank full of gas in my car. I go to the gas station, I pay whatever it costs to fill my tank of gas, and I am putting chemical energy in my car, in the tank, that allows me to get my car down the road. My car will take that gasoline, it'll convert the energy stored in the chemical bonds of that gas through ignition, combustion, fire some pistons, move a drive shaft, get my car down the road. Now, if we think about that in terms of chemical energy in a tank of gas, there's a lot of chemical energy stored in that tank of gas. And our car slowly releases that energy. If I were going on a road trip and I were to fill my tank full of gas, would that tank full of gas get me a couple minutes down the road or a couple hours down the road before I have to stop and refill? Hours, right? It's going to get me down the road a couple hours. Because that process of converting that chemical energy stored in gasoline is a slow, purposeful release, and it converts it into mechanical energy, and we lose some as heat. But it converts that over a series of hours. Now, that's that whole explosion versus a slow burn. I'm going to say a combustion in your engines is a relatively slow burn compared to the alternative, which the alternative would be kaboom. Okay, your tank of gas goes kapow, kaboom. That would be a very rapid release of energy. That entire tank, movie style, right? Big ball of fire. If you were to look at how much energy was released from a giant explosion all at once compared to all the energy released over that couple hours getting you down the road, it'd be equivalent. The amount of heat and sound and all that energy released by that one big kaboom would be equivalent to the slow release hours and hours if you added them all together. It's more efficient for our car to use a little bit of gas at a time for controlled combustion compared to one massive combustion all at once. Same thing happens in our body. When we eat our food, it's a slow release of that energy. It's not like I can make it a couple steps down the hall, and then I gotta eat again, couple steps, right? It's a slow release that we get, and that's good. So when we talk about the overall big picture of cellular respiration and photosynthesis, this is a similar diagram to what we had on that Pogel activity right at the beginning that we started this unit with. And we're still going to come back, we're still going to talk about that diagram. But this is a general kind of a common picture. It's not 100% accurate, but it's a pretty good overview. The thing that does not show 100% accuracy is this part that I referenced earlier, is not all of cellular respiration occurs in the mitochondria. Most of cellular respiration occurs in the mitochondria. 1 out of the 3 steps occurs in the cytoplasm. It's an important step, it's a necessary step, but the majority of the ATPs produced are produced in the mitochondria. Only like 2 out of 36 are actually produced in the cytoplasm. Now if we look at the products versus the reactants, so the products are the arrows coming out, the arrows going in are the reactants. So these products, oxygen and glucose, become these reactants. These products, carbon dioxide and water, become these reactants. And those things, the carbon dioxide, the water, the oxygen, the glucose, are cycled over and over and over again. What happens is they get broken down and put back together. In order to do this, we need some energy input from the sun in order for photosynthesis to occur. So we need an input, we need some solar input, we need some energy going into photosynthesis. And then through the process of cellular respiration, we get oxygen and glucose going in. Our products are carbon dioxide and water. And then we have this chemical energy also being removed, also coming out, and also a product of cellular respiration. So what it did is it took chemical energy stored in glucose and it converted it into a different form of chemical energy, ATP, that our cells can readily use. Our cells don't use sugar for my muscles to contract directly. My muscle cells use ATP. Now where did those ATP come from? They came from glucose. And where did that glucose come from? It came from the food we ate and we digested in our digestive system. Okay? If we were to go through and look at where these things occur, photosynthesis occurs in the chloroplast of plants, algae, and some bacteria. Cellular respiration occurs mostly in the mitochondria of all living things. So, do plants, if all living things go through cellular respiration, and if a plant is a living thing, which I hope we all agree that it is, that means that plants need oxygen in order to survive. They need glucose in order to survive. They just are the ones that make those two things. Now, when we talk about oxygen being required for cellular respiration, there is a version of cellular respiration that does not require oxygen. It's referred to as, in your notes it talked about it, that you filled in, anaerobic respiration. It's down a couple slides here. And it's when you can go through and you break down sugars without oxygen being present. It works, it's not very efficient. Eventually, if you don't come out of anaerobic respiration, you run out of energy. Okay, so we can do it for short periods of time, but most of our lives we spend doing aerobic respiration. You have plenty of oxygen right now as you sit there. You're breathing in air, which is oxygen. You breathe out carbon dioxide. You are not starved of oxygen. You have a surplus of oxygen, so cellular respiration occurs at a regular rate and relatively efficiently effective. But in the absence of oxygen, your body can go through cellular respiration for a short period of time, but it's not very efficient. Okay? Energy input from the sun, energy output ATP. Glucose and oxygen go in, water and carbon dioxide go out. They cycle over and over and over again. All right, so that's a good spot for us to stop for the day. If you have questions or you need something from me, please reach out to me and let me know what I can do to help. Otherwise, we will pick this up tomorrow and we'll kind of wrap the unit up. I think I said next Tuesday we're testing. I think I said that. Next Tuesday we're going to test.